This is not your mother's middle-aged. No longer is waking up each day, living the wash, rinse, and repeat cycle acceptable. We have the life lessons, the relationships, the wins, and the losses with which to navigate to our highest self, without hesitation and without fear leading the way. We have been there and done that, and so we have so much to offer the world and each other. So join me on this journey, speaking to ordinary women doing extraordinary things for new insights, new ideas, new medical breakthroughs, and new life lessons. You will be inspired to find your best life here and now. My name is Wendy Charles Maguire, and this is your Second Wind podcast. Welcome, Second Winders. I have with us today Janine Valentine. You may remember her from her episode, which was March 1st, 2021. And the title of that was, You Cannot Reach the Highest of Highs Without Feeling the Lowest of Lows. And Janine, in that episode, had shared some pretty interesting things of her life and how it had kind of come to a head, where she remembered saying on the podcast, she said on the podcast that someone asked her what she would like for dinner, and she really didn't know. She had no idea what she wanted. She had no idea what I liked. It was like the light bulb went off, and she's like, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I can do. Nothing. And then she kind of climbed out of that through a series of scary scenarios where she threw herself into her fears, overcame them, built her business, and ended up going out and getting clients. And then by the time we were talking, had a waiting list for people who wanted to work with her. And she also refound her own gift for writing and poetry. And she shared a poem with us on that podcast. I suggest you listen to it. It's called, I think it's called Heights, right? It was, yeah, it's such an amazing poem, and really anyone listening can resonate. It resonates with anyone listening. But I saw that through all the social media that Janine had written a book, and I'm like, oh, she wrote a book about what we talked about on the episode. But no, that is not it at all. Janine had another life-altering experience where she had to jump into her fear again, overcome, and then like magic, she had this download that she needed to write a book. And very quickly, she produced this book that is getting really good reviews all over. And hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, you'll be able to order it, get it, and read it. And I wanted to have her on for one reason, but then found out that this book that I thought it was isn't, and it's even better than I possibly could have imagined. And the name of the book is Both Things Are True, A Journey from Fearing Trust to Trusting Fear. So Janine, thank you so much for coming back on. Just love you and what you do and how you do. It's unselfish and you're great. So I want to hear this story because I don't really even know it. And let's go. Let's get right into it. Because you said there was a moment when it all clicked. And I think that was when you were at the beach, right? And then we can go back to the story of why you were on this to begin with.
So it actually is all related, and I think we repeat lessons, but it isn't like on the flat plane. We repeat lessons in a spiral upwards. So this big thing that happened, sometimes you get to choose to face your fears by doing things like starting a business, and other times you don't get a choice, right? It just happens to you. So this was that. Yeah. Right. So the basic premise is that I went on this ridiculously bougie vacation with 11 friends. There were 12 of us. We were on a 50-meter yacht out in the middle of the Indian Ocean in the Maldives. And I mean, I was getting a massage every day. It was like ridiculous. I've never had a vacation like this. So it was spectacular. And then, so this was just last September. So September of 2021. So we'd been in the pandemic. We'd had to do all the testing to go on vacation, but things were opening back up. The vaccine was in place. That's just kind of where we were. But it was required that we do a PCR test on board the boat before we were allowed to fly home. And so we all took our tests. Now, I had only been on this boat, and it was only 40 guests, and then the staff and crew there. And I tested positive. I was the only one in our group of 12 that tested positive. There was one other woman on the boat, another guest from Russia, who also tested positive. My roommate, who had slept literally like just this far apart from me, did not get it. Her husband, the Russian woman's husband, didn't get it. But they didn't have a plan. It had never happened before. And the boat manager told me he had no idea what would happen to me when I left that boat. So he was sending a crew member with us to Hulu Male, Male City, the main island in the Maldives. And we were going to retest in the hopes that it was a false positive. And he was going to get us to the clinic and to interpret, because it's a very conservative Islamic island. And so, a woman going by herself would have been challenging in and of itself, but there was also a big language barrier. So he went with us, got us to the clinic. We were put in this little room with no windows. There was a bed and just a little bit of walking room around it, a TV playing something that was like Indian soap operas with, subtitles. And we were there for 6.5 hours waiting for the results. And when he came back with the result,
oh my gosh,
and told me I was positive, my roommate had been allowed to go with me. The rest of my friends were waiting to fly home. So they were disembarking the boat in a different way. I was whisked off the boat. I didn't get to say goodbye to most of my friends. And so my roommate was with me, and now we had 20 minutes till she needed to leave to get to the airport to meet up with everybody else to fly out. And I was hoping to be with her, but then I got the second positive test. And our interpreter also had to get back to the boat because they had another round of guests coming for the next week. So I was about to lose everybody. I had 20 minutes to find a place to stay, because he told me, we don't have a place for you to stay. We don't have a plan. You're going to need to book a hotel, but don't book a tourist hotel because they won't let you stay without proof that you're negative. So you're going to need to go to, he kind of showed me this place on the map, somewhere where like the people that work in the tourist industry mostly stay. Book it. If they ask you, you're going to need to lie and tell them you're negative because we have no place for you to stay. So I booked this 14-day stay, and he put me in a cab, and I went off to this little, it's like a hostel hotel kind of. I had my own room, my own bathroom. It was actually, pretty decent compared to the holding room I'd just been in. So, but there were just all these problems that came there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's a closed currency, and I had very little cash on me, and the cash, I had about $90, but most of that was unusable in their culture. They would hold it up and show you the little micro tears, or if there was ink on it, or if it was crumpled. They wouldn't accept it. They would kind of shame you like you were trying to pass off bad currency, fraudulent currency. So once I discerned what was usable, I realized I had $38. And everywhere I tried to use my credit card, they shook their head, no, cash. So this was Saturday afternoon. I checked in. We hadn't eaten all day. I picked this room because it said it had room service and a terrace. And I thought, well, I'm going to be quarantined. I'll be able to be outside. I'll be able to have food and water delivered. And so that was what I thought I was doing. So I checked in. I ordered room service. They brought it to me. I asked them to put it on my room. No. I handed my credit card. No. Cash. Bottom just dropped out. I was like, oh, no. I can't do this. And I was like, kept trying to hand him my card. No. So I tried to hand him some of the cash that hadn't worked at the last place. And he did the same thing. So I spent $10 of my $38 to pay for that meal. I knew that I could not order room service again.
Oh my God.
So, and the terrace that I had turned out to be a shared terrace. So there was one other room that used that terrace. So if there was anybody staying in the other room, then I wouldn't be able to be out on the terrace in quarantine. Sorry, I just noticed my earrings falling off. I'm going to have to just go without it. the terrace was going to be a part-time option. So, and then the room was full of bugs. I was getting bug bites all over me. There were visible big beetles and small little ants, and there's all this stuff. So the next morning I woke up symptomatic and no food or water. So I put on 2 masks. My main symptom was dizzy. It was very hard. I had to go down 52 steps of a spiral staircase, and I had to find a little market, and I leaned in and held my credit card up to see if they would take it, and the guy nodded and held up his machine. And so it was like a little gas station market here. I mean, it wasn't a gas station, it was their market, but that's what it reminded me of. And so in my room, I had a coffee mug and a literal teaspoon. You know how people sometimes collect the little baby teaspoons? I had one of those. No microwave or fridge. So this is what I was working with. I didn't have a knife. I didn't have, plates or napkins or anything like that. So I bought a jar of peanut butter, 4 jars of tuna fish that had pop tops, 1 giant carrot, a small box of coconut milk, a little bag of muesli like granola cereal, and 4 large bottles of water because it was all I could carry. And I made it back to my room, collapsed on my bed, and was unable to leave again for 5 days. I was too sick, and so I was rationing.
You're missing a part, Janine, that you told me. You're missing a part about this. Didn't you have to climb?
Yeah, I said that when I was saying about going down, that I had to
your room?
Go down 52 spiral stairs. Yep. And so then I had to carry that stuff back up those stairs, 52 steps. Yep. And the phone in my room didn't work. Like the hardline telephone to the front desk didn't work. So if I needed anything, I would have to be able to make it down those stairs. And no one knew where I was. And no one knew I was sick. So it was like, what if I get really, really sick? How do I get medical care? I'm going to have to be able to get myself down those stairs to get medical care. And it's going to have to be serious enough that I risk outing myself because I won't be allowed to stay here anymore. So I knew that it would have to be bad enough that I probably wouldn't be able to get myself down the stairs, So it was pretty horrifying, honestly. And rationing water when you're sick is scary. I knew I needed to be hydrating, but I couldn't.
What's going through your head during this time? Like, what? You're by yourself. What are you thinking?
I was crying a lot. I was feeling very abandoned. I was spending a lot of time thinking about aloneness. Like I thought, we talked about this in the last session, a year and a half ago, that I had to learn to enjoy my own company and learn to be alone. And I really thought in all these years that I had practiced that I'd actually come to enjoy being alone. But this was such a different kind of alone because there was no choice in it. I couldn't choose, okay, that's enough of that. I want to talk to somebody now. I couldn't even talk to anybody. There was no one to talk to. And even when I did see a person, they couldn't speak my language. And my friends and family, we had an 11-hour time difference. So I was asleep when they were awake and vice versa. So there was this little window of time early in the morning and late at night. We could use WhatsApp because my phone carrier didn't have Maldivian service, even for a charge. So I had no phone service on my cell, but I had WhatsApp. And so we were able to call and text through that app. And so I just had these little windows where I could touch in and say, yeah, I'm okay. Started kind of living for those, But yeah, I started journaling, trying to keep track of, there was a lot. I mean, those days were, A, I was really sick and I slept a lot. And B, I was trying to juggle a lot. Like I have 2 dogs and I had a pet sitter at home who had thought she was going home, but now I needed her to stay 2 more weeks. So I had to work that out. And I still have my own business. I run my own business. And thank God I have assistants now. And I had 2 assistants that were helping. And so, but I needed to let them and my clients know, like, you guys are still kind of on your own. I can help a little when I'm feeling better. But an 11-hour time difference means 24 hours between emails. By the time they get it and respond and I get it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So there was just all this logistical stuff that was happening too when you realize you're going to be gone a month and you thought you were only going to be gone 2 weeks, right? So yeah, it was a lot those first few days.
Mm-hmm.
But things turned around. There was a lot that changed. So, take a quick sip of water and we'll, yeah. So,
Yeah. So let's dive into
yeah,
the water
yeah.
situation.
So, on day 6, I think it was, I was well enough to make it down those stairs and replenish my food and water. And on my way back from the market, there was a man who owned the restaurant next door that was the room service. And that's why I couldn't put it on my room tab. It was a separate restaurant. But I was definitely the only girl that looked like me there, the only woman not in a burqa. And so I stood out, and he had pretty good English. He was from Bangladesh, and he asked me why I wasn't ordering food. And I told him, you only take cash. I don't have enough cash, and I'm here for a long time. And he asked how long, and when I told him, he looked at me and he goes, I will take your credit card. And he walked with me back to my hotel. And there were 2 young men in their 20s that worked 12-hour shifts at the little hotel. So it was only the 2 men. They did everything there. And he told them, he stood there and he told them, I'm taking her credit card. I'm authorizing it. I ordered 2 meals. I was so hungry. I ordered 2 meals and some water. And they brought it up to my room for me later. So we solved that problem. And then I decided I was going to break quarantine for a second reason. And I needed to be out of my room, not trying to get food and water, right? I just needed to go sit outside. And there was someone in the room next door. Terrace wasn't a great option. And so the beach directly across the street was this public beach. And I had watched out my window during the last few days and noticed that it was empty all day because it was hot. And so the locals came out at sunset. They came out in the evenings and enjoyed the beach. So I knew it would be empty. So I got dressed and went over there. And as soon as I walked through this grove of trees onto the beach, there was this log. It literally had like sunlight on it, like rays, like a beacon. And I knew that was for me. I was like, I am going to sit here and I'm going to have conversations with the universe here and talk. I started using the sea as my metaphor for what I was going through. And I shouted at the sea and I talked and I prayed, and there was just so much happening there. But I ended up using that log as my like little sacred space to work through all my head stuff, right? So it wasn't that same day, but on day 8, a couple days later, I went down to the beach. And this is what you were talking about, is there was a group of women in the middle of the day. This is the first time I'd seen people there in the day. And there were probably 15, 20 women, and they were still in their full burqas, and they wear the black gloves and the shoes, and it's just their eyes showing. And they were all swimming in the ocean, and they all had foam noodles to like support them in the water. And it occurred to me, well, with all that weight on and it gets wet, like they're probably in serious, the risk of drowning if they don't have something to hold on to, because that would just be so heavy.
Are they swimming with the shoes?
There were a couple
are
of
they
women
swimming with the
on
shoes as well?
the sand, and I could see a couple of them were barefoot or with socks, but some of them still had their shoes on. So I think it just varied. There was one man with them, and because I don't think it would have been appropriate for a man not to be with them. But he was sitting on the beach in the shade a little ways back, but he was watching them pretty closely. At one point I thought they might be having a swim lesson, because some of them were like laying on the sand in the shallowest part of the surf and kicking. They still had their noodles, but they were kicking like we would see kids do on the side of the pool. But I don't know. I think they might have just been playing where it felt more safe in the shallower water, which again is a beautiful metaphor. Yes. So it was this moment. It was this moment that I reflected back to even all the things we talked about in our first interview together. Just how I have all these same layers on, that my burqa isn't a physical black cloth, but that I have all those layers of other people's expectations of me, of my own expectations of me, of just wanting to suppress and hide and to be the same as everyone else, to look the same from the outside, to not be perceived as too different, right? And so that's a lot of the reasons women wear burqas is the anonymity, to be more homogenous so that, they won't be noticeable, right? So it's just really interesting. Like, I think we all, to some degree, are doing this, and it comes back to that suppression. Whereas I realized after my divorce that I had been suppressed, and I was largely blaming that. I was owning my role in that, but I was blaming it on, my circumstances and the people I was around and that sort of thing. But I realized while I'd come out of my shell and was expressing myself and had started this business and even started writing, there was still stuff that I was like holding tight inside of my body, way down. And this what I call my colossal timeout definitely was making me deal with those. It turns out, didn't trust myself. And I had never learned how to trust myself. And while I'm a very competent woman and had proved that in many areas of my life, I still felt like the story in my head was I had great people around me. I had great resources. When I made a big decision, I could talk about that with other women who were business owners or my close friends who knew me really well. And we would sort of, validate one another. And then I would be comforted to move forward. But you strip all that away and it's just you and no one to like reflect back to you if what you're doing is good or bad or right or wrong or safe, not safe. Like, it's just all you. And the only ideas are going to come from you. The only resources are going to come from your willingness to open up and seek them, your own, your mindset, all of it. So I looked at these women and I was like identifying with them and imagined swimming with them. And I imagined just letting my burqa float off down to the floor of the sea. And I could feel it. I could feel the water against my skin differently. I could feel like vulnerable. And I felt super visible, but also smaller. But the biggest word that rose up for me was buoyant. I felt buoyant. And it was like really powerful to just realize, I'm wearing this weight and I don't need to. And so that's where the work kind of began, was there with that turning point. It was like, okay, how do I carry this home with me? How do I dig in and be enough inside? How do I stop suppressing myself? How do I face this giant fear of mine of being truly alone, and realize like I'm enough. I'm not alone. I'm enough. I have myself and I have my higher power. And then when you look at all the people, look at this restaurant owner, I was sourced. I had food and water right there, right when I needed it. And it was like that the whole trip. I had these amazing men. It was all men. I had no interactions with women while I was there. But I had these amazing men that took beautiful care of me. And they didn't even know. They didn't know I was sick. They didn't know what they were offering me. But they offered exactly the right things. Yeah.
So what do you think can you now look back? Is there something you can attribute that to? Like, I've talked to different people who said, yeah, and then the answer came right when I asked, or that door opened right when the window closed, or do you know what I mean? And everybody has their own idea of why that was the case. Do you have an idea of why things worked when they needed to?
I mean, it was about trust. It was when I wasn't frantic. It never resolved itself when I was embodying fear. Never once. So it was like the fear consumes and pulls us down, right? And that's kind of the message of my book here. That's why I say from fearing trust to trusting fear. Because, a lot of us fear trust. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust others. We don't trust God, or however we identify our higher power. So we all have some sort of trust issue, right? And we're kind of afraid to do that. And and then learning to trust fear. So for me, it was like this giant shift of trusting that the thing I'm afraid of, that I have no choice but to go through, that there is something extraordinary. There are beautiful gifts inside our fear, like extraordinary gifts inside our fear. And so I got to practice being present, just being present in my fear. And I realized that when I got really, really present, the fear dissipated, because the fear lived in my head. It was, I'm replaying the past, even if it was a minute ago or a day ago. All the things that had led up to this were terrifying. And if I was reliving those, I was in fear. And if I got even a minute into the future and started doing all the what ifs, and how am I going to get my next meal? And do I have enough water? And how am I going to test to get home? And what about my cash? And there was so much, right? But if I could just be right here in this very, very minute, I had this moment where I was like, oh my gosh, it is not lost on me how extraordinarily beautiful this beach is. And I would rather be home, right? I would rather be home. But this is an extraordinarily beautiful place. And if I could just be here and feel the sand on my toes and the sun on my skin and breathe, and I'm actually okay right now. And it's when I start thinking about what's going to happen in a minute or what just happened, then that fear. So it was like this learning to get inside the fear, allow it to be there. I can't negate it. I can't push it down, right? Which is what I had done in the past. I had always tried to talk myself out of my fear, tell myself how irrational it was, and try to problem solve, and, all those things we do. But then it just pops up. I started referring to it as whack-a-mole, is what it felt like. It just kind of found different ways to seep out. The fear is real. And I had this moment where I recognized, I felt like my higher power was looking at me and saying, my child, of course you're scared. Of course you're scared. It's okay. I don't mind that you're scared. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have to mean you don't trust yourself or me. Like, you're scared. This is freaking scary. Like, be scared. But I've got you. And I know that I've got you. And so that's where the both things are true. I could hold on to both. I could be terrified and in full trust at the same time, and that it didn't negate one or the other. I didn't need to invalidate any of my emotions. I could just be with them. But it was always when I got into those moments where I could be present and be in trust and leaning more heavily in that direction, that the help showed up. And because I was looking for it. I was looking for the good. I was looking for what was going right. And then it would show up.
Yeah, I think when you say that, it's like getting the gentleman who owned the restaurant to allow you to use your credit card. You didn't go at him. He just asked you a question. You could have said, well, because you won't take my credit card, I'm like starving to death. You don't understand. And then I have to climb up these stairs. And you could have freaked out on him, right? Like, because you're scared, you're in this place, you don't have anything, you feel like crap, and you haven't eaten like anything substantial per se. And you could have gone at him with the fear leading, and you didn't. You just said, well, you were kind of matter of fact, it seems. Well, the card won't work, and it is what it is. And that allowed the goodness to come through. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, it allowed him to
better,
offer, right?
I'm
he
not
got
a
to
writer.
Just offer.
Like some people are.
Yeah.
Yes. He got to feel like he was serving a purpose as well in that moment.
Yeah. And I mean, there was no mindset to that. I wasn't doing that intentionally, but I think I was very much in acceptance, in that moment. I wasn't angry. I was very much in acceptance, and I was carrying bags of some more food and water, and I'd made it through, and I knew I was going to get healthier from there, not worse. Like, I was still sick, but I was better than I had been. So I think, I was just in a different mindset. But it just allowed him to step up and do that. And he didn't have to do that. I wasn't asking him to do that, but I'm just so grateful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And you said you had brought a bunch of journals with you to write your poetry, which I said on the last podcast. Oh, you're going to be famous for your poetry. You should keep doing that. And you're like, yes, I'm doing it. I am doing it. So that's one of the things you wanted to do on this luxurious
Yes.
vacation, was do some poetry. But what ended up
Well,
happening?
I did write some poetry on the boat. In fact, this is really cool. I'll share this with you guys. I don't know if this will show. This is the back of my book. This photo was taken on the boat, and it was taken by one of my friends that went with me.
Okay.
I didn't know she took it, and I was writing a poem. So I was just sitting there on the boat, and I was writing a poem, and she just thought I looked so peaceful and beautiful, and she snapped this photo. And little did we know. So that was actually, I was calling it at that time a love letter to the sea, and I was writing this poem to the ocean. And I grew up in Oregon, and so I have like this deep affinity for the sea and a lot of respect for it, and have been around it a lot. So there's some beautiful analogies. I'm a water baby, and I just was really leaning into that, being out there. So I ended up finishing that poem in quarantine, and it shifted, and it's now called I Met Me by the Sea. And so I, used some of what I'd written and reworked some of it and added to it. And that's in the book. And so we ended up using that photo on the back, which I just love. I love just how that all worked together. But I had extra journals that I hadn't filled on the boat, and I journaled every day. It was how I kept track of everything. It was how I wrote down my symptoms in there. I wrote down names of people that I had talked to, and ideas that occurred to me. Like, I was still trying to figure out how I was going to get home. I just missed my flight. I hadn't been able to tell anybody. So was that gone? I needed somebody to help me figure that out. Like, did I need to buy a new thing? Just all this stuff. But I also was journaling all of my emotions and conversations I'd had with the sea when I was sitting on my warrior bench, and the things that were occurring to me, the ways people were showing up for me, just even my friends back home. I mean, it just really opened me up to how we can show up for someone in crisis in little ways that, like, they had no idea what it meant to me, but just like it's still so emotional, but I had just enough room for a yoga mat to, like, I could have laid on the floor next to my bed to do yoga, which I love to do. But there were so many bugs in my room that I was not going to lie down.
Oh.
But one of my friends shared her Qigong link with me, which is basically standing up yoga, right? You just do it standing up, and it's energy movement. And so I had enough room to do that. And it made me I didn't have energy to do anything that was strenuous, but this was energy movement, and it just got my breathing normal. It felt really good. And so that was a really powerful thing to send that to someone. I had other friends that were just like slamming with memes. I had one friend that would get up in the middle of the night to use the restroom. She didn't want to talk. She didn't want to wake herself all the way up, but she was thinking of me. And without fail, she would just text me through WhatsApp, just on my way to the restroom, just want you to know I love you. Just thinking about you. Just one little sentence like that in the middle, which was the daytime for me. And I was used to not hearing from anyone in the daytime. But I would get these little blips from her. It wasn't a conversation. I didn't really respond because she didn't want to be awake, right? But to just know, that in the middle of someone else's night, that they're still thinking about you is just really powerful. So there were just a lot of really beautiful ways that we were able to be community. So it was really good. It was really good.
So tell us, that's amazing. Tell us how you managed to finally get home. What did that look like?
A lot of tears. So the airline was amazing. So one of the friends that went with me, I've traveled with her before, and I trust her decision-making in terms of travel plans. And so I couldn't call the airline myself. There was not an 800 number usable. And so I messaged her, and she called the airline on my behalf from the US and told them what had happened, and asked if she could help book my flight home and how much credit they might be willing to extend me. And they fully comped me. Like, they just gave me the full credit. and did not, I mean, they weren't able to resell
Oh,
that seat. So that was so generous on their part. And so I decided that we were going to act as if I was going home on that Friday, day 14. And so even though I, hadn't tested negative, I was like, well, if I test positive again, like I can't even think about that. I can't even hold space for that. But if I do, then we'll just have to change the flight. But I need to know I have a flight. I just needed it. And this was just a few days before. I think we were on day 10 or 11 when I had her book it. So I had to go on day 13. So I can't tell the whole story here, but I had to use some of my precious cash along the way. So that $38 had dwindled to $15. And it was three $5 bills on purpose. I knew that the taxi ride to the clinic was $5 because we'd just taken that to my hotel from the clinic. And so I knew for retesting, I was going to spend $5 to get there and $5 to get back and another $5 to get to the airport on the next day. And that was the last of my cash. Taxi drivers would not take a credit card. The nearest ATM, because I know people are going to ask this, was a 20-minute walk for me. And I wasn't strong enough to make that walk. And it would have been around people. And I really was supposed to be quarantining. I was contagious, so it just wasn't an option for me. So I just had to throw that in there. So I took on Thursday, the taxi to the clinic and tested and came back. So now I have my $5 left and a plane ticket tomorrow. And they tell me they'll get the results at 7:30 Friday morning. So, that was a long sleepless night. And then I took a long, time on the beach in the morning, and I came up at 8 in the morning. I distracted myself in case it was late. And then I go to check and there's nothing. And so the doctor calls shortly after and tells me my test results were inconclusive. I know. I didn't even know that was possible. I'm like, feels like either it's present or it's not, so wouldn't that be a negative? But no, it doesn't work like that. So he told me I needed to get back to the clinic immediately to retest again. I was like, I don't have time. I have a flight out. And my room had been rented to someone else. So I was like, I have to take my stuff with me.
Oh, no.
I have to take my stuff.
Oh, no.
I started crying. I was like, I'm homeless. I'm out of money and I have no place to stay. I'm going to have to take all of my stuff with me. And he said, we have there was a clinic at the airport. So he had me just go to the airport and test there. Okay. So I used my last $5 and had everything with me and got the test. And then again, it was going to be another 6, I don't know why it always took 6 hours, but it did, to get the results. So, I seriously had a panic attack in the airport right after testing. I thought I would go sit by the sea. It was an open air airport. It was pretty cool, actually. There was no walls once you got through security. So in the area I was in, there was no walls and you could see the sea right across just this little taxi roadway. And so I sat at this table and I thought, okay, I'll just sit here by the sea. I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be okay. And then it cracked me open instead. It's the connection with the sea. It just it was like, no, we're going to feel all the feels right now. And so I just completely lost it.
Oh my God.
And so I started walking. I was like, I have to move. I have to keep my body moving. I didn't want to draw attention. I didn't want anybody to try to help me. And so I started walking and I walked to there was this hotel that I recognized the name of because my friends back on the boat, which felt like a year ago, but a couple of weeks ago, had all day to waste before they flew out. And so they had booked a day pass at this very hotel that was right next to the airport, where it was a luxury hotel. It was a resort hotel, very unlike where I had been staying, but it had this lovely pool and they sold day passes. And so my friends had all been there and I recognized the name. So I walked to it and I was a hot mess. That story is really funny in the book. I was a hot mess by the time I got there. And I think they probably discussed whether they should call emergency medical care for me. But I got in the water. I tried to calm down. I tried to wait. I couldn't relax into this beautiful place. I just didn't fit there, So I went back and they let me wait in the clinic and my results came back as negative with just minutes left for me. I literally had just enough time to fill out the online form where I put my QR code showing I was negative in, and then they called for me to go. It's different there. So the check-in process is timed. You only have a certain amount of time for that plane, and everybody on that plane checks in that time. You can't just wander in. So we did that. So I made it through, started texting everybody, I'm coming home, I'm coming home. It was just like this really emotional time. And I was like, I don't care where I sit. It's like, just get me on the plane. And it was really beautiful because I flew through Qatar, and then I flew into Chicago, and then on to Denver, which is where I live. So I'll never forget the feeling of when we landed in Chicago, and I heard the first English that I'd heard in a very long time, and they came over to the loudspeaker.
Oh, yeah.
And they said, "Welcome to the United States of America." And I burst into tears. I was just like, oh God, thank God I'm home. I laughed later. I was like, the guy next to me must have thought I was ultra patriotic. But I was like, I could drive home from here. I got it. And then when I got to Denver, my whole tribe, they were right there at the top of the escalator. They had signs and balloons and teddy bears and flowers, and it was just like this big, huge hug and pile, and everybody had wondered who I was. The other people were like, what is going on? But it was a very powerful. I mean, they just all came to be there to witness me coming home. And yeah, they had stocked my fridge. They filled my whole apartment with balloons and flowers and champagne and soft things. There was a deprivation of soft for me. There had been nothing soft. And so like it was hot there. It was just a sheet on the bed. The towels were line dried and kind of scratchy. There was no toilet paper. Yeah. There just was nothing. It was a hard tile floor. There was nothing soft. And so when I came home, I had my puppies and these soft blankets. I just couldn't get enough of it. It was interesting. That was one of the things I really, really missed. And toilet paper, they bought massive Costco size, couple of them, because the whole toileting situation there was very foreign to me as well. It was not a bidet. It was a very different like sprayer thing that was had a huge learning curve, let's just say. Yeah. So it just was a lot of just getting naked to use the restroom because everything was getting wet. But yeah, so it was funny. Just the things we miss, right? Silverware. I hadn't had silverware.
Oh my gosh. Silverware. Yeah, you only had that little tiny spoon.
Right. And I mean, they sent up a fork every time they sent up room service. So it isn't like I didn't have silverware once I got that, but I just didn't have access to anything like a knife to cut things. And, I couldn't peel anything. And yeah, so just having easy access to all that felt really foreign when I got home. Yeah.
That's amazing. So you're home. You probably now you've got to get back into your business because you've been gone, obviously. So there's got to be some stress there. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's right. You've been on a whole month at that point. So what makes you then say to yourself, because I would imagine, I know when I was sick, just the thought of catching back up, that's all time consuming, and getting back into myself and being healthy again, trying to feel healthy again. That's a job in and of itself. And then you decide you're going to write a book. Like, how does that happen?
It wasn't a decision. It was a knowing. And I knew it while I was in quarantine. I can't even really pinpoint the moment.
Really?
I have a big sense of humor. And so a lot of what was happening was also funny. And so I remember having this moment, because you'll remember the phone in my room didn't work to call the front desk. So to order room service, I had to traipse 52 stairs down a spiral staircase, place my order, right? And in order to do that, I had to put on flip-flops, I had to put on a bra and cover my shoulders and put on a mask, right? So this whole prepping thing, get all the way down there, place my order, then come all the way back up and wait for them to deliver it to me because it's room service. And God forbid I carry my own stuff back up. I tried several times. They're like, nope, we got you. and so that I could eat, so I could have enough energy to go back down and do it again later. I mean, it just was hilarious. I was grateful every step of the way. I was grateful because it was hella better than what I was doing before, right? But I just remember like walking down those stairs at one point, I just burst out laughing. I just could picture them like the made for TV movie of this. Like I was like, what the hell? Like this is funny, you know? And I kept having those moments where I was the observer, where I could just kind of see. And then I'd have these deeply spiritual moments, some of which I shared. So it was like this understanding that I think that there are other people out there. I know that there are other people out there, specifically women, but not exclusively women, who need to hear this, who will be blessed and helped by just witnessing the messiness of my experience, because I'm not trying to teach anyone how to do anything. I'm just opening the door, right? I'm just like, witness this, and maybe you'll relate to it. And maybe there's something here that will open you up without you having to like climb into this dark place that I had to go into, you know? So, or maybe when your biggest fear happens to you, you'll remember my story and you'll be able to more quickly look for the beauty behind the fear. You'll be able to look at, what am I not trusting? What's working? What is for me in this? And so I just sort of had this knowing that it was going to be a book. And so I didn't have a choice. I was writing. I would wake up in the middle of the night and I was writing. My head was writing. I had to keep notepads everywhere. And I just kept writing. And it was interesting because I've never done anything like this. And so I hired this publishing company as like a hybrid, so I could self-publish but still have the support of professionals. And so I had a very professional editor, and I sent him my manuscript, and he asked me how many rewrites I'd done before I gave it to him. And I was like, none. Isn't that what we do together? And he's like, oh no, he was shocked that it was in the shape it was in. It was excellent, and it just did not take this bit. It came out almost how it is, you know? Yeah.
You said also you felt like you were channeling, like the information was just flowing through you.
Yeah, because
which is really interesting.
No,
and you've never had that experience.
It's a little bit
before?
like that when I write poetry. I sort of feel like I get in like the flow of a river. Like if you're in the middle of a river versus on the edges, it's like when I really get into writing, it's like I'm in the middle, and I just am going, and I often don't know where my poetry is taking me. I think I'm writing about one thing, and then when I stop, I'm like, oh, that took a turn, and it's about something else, but it's right. That happens a lot. So that's the closest experience that I've had with that. But this was, my journals were like the foundation, and they were raw. They were me, and we kept those in my voice, like 100%. I brought in text messages from WhatsApp verbatim into the book so that you could see kind of how that progressed and how we were responding to each other. But then I had this beautiful ability to like observe with hindsight from the safety of my home, from, you know, the comfort that I'd taken for granted, and just be able to look back and be like, I was stuck in the micro of it when I was in the moment there. And then I had this macro view. We pulled back a little bit when I got home, and I was changed. I didn't fit in my world anymore. I had previously been this massive planner. Like I just knew I could tell you what was happening 2 or 3 weeks from now to the minute almost. I had the inability to look at tomorrow for a very long time. I couldn't hold it in my head. I did not know what was tomorrow. And I had this need to listen to my body and to respond. And I was used to working crazy, 14-hour days and ignoring my body, being absent to my needs and just pushing through. And I wasn't capable of that anymore. It was like, nope, I need to move my body. I need nourishment. I need water. I was like really aware of what I needed and needing to respond to it. So I was writing about this. The last part of the book is about assimilation. It's about what coming home looks like, and how when you've had something that profoundly changes you and then you try to fit back into your world, you don't, and you're grateful you don't, but you see things in a big different way, So I just wrote about all of that as well.
What would you say? I mean, I'm sure there's so many things, but if you had to pick one thing that changed the most for you, what would it be?
One thing is hard. Um,
Yeah. Like, what's the first thing that
well,
comes to your mind?
I guess it all does come back to trusting myself. It really does. It's because even like the planning shows a little bit of a lack of trust in what might just flow. It's like a need to control, right?
Mm.
And listening.
Janine, I thought you were
Yeah,
going to say the toilet.
I actually
I
got good
thought you
at
were
the
going to say
toilet by
going to
the
the
end, so I
bathroom.
could do that now. But yes, yes. I think even like the way I listen to myself now, it's about trust. I think this trusting of myself, I still have some judgment around what I'm hearing myself say. It's like,
Mm.
um, I had a friend that went to this outdoor concert last night and I was supposed to go with her. And one of the things that's changed for me is I'm more sensitive. I can, because I'm more open. And so I can feel things, and it's hard for me to be around noise. It's hard for me to be around loud people or loud, large groups. And I was starting to feel this resistance to going, and I didn't want to feel it. I love outdoor concerts. I love music and dancing with my feet in the grass. And I wanted this so bad, but I could feel it. I could feel my body clamping down around it. And I had to be honest, and tell her, I don't think I can go. I think it will cost me too much, that it'll take me days to recover if I go. And so I didn't go. But I had a lot of judgment still of myself, of not being able to rally, all those, shoulds in your head of like, you love this. Why don't you just go? You'd probably love it if you went. But it's like, no, my trust in myself is stronger. And I may not fully understand why, but I know I wasn't supposed to go, that it was going to cost me some recovery time that I couldn't afford right now. And so I listened and I did that. So that's got to be the most profound thing, because it ripples out into all the other areas. Is that I really, even when I don't understand it, even when I don't like it,
Yeah.
I still trust what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm.
Right. Making decisions
Mm-hmm.
without expectations and just
Right.
going with the flow, being fluid, right? That
Is
that's like my
it?
word of
Oh,
the
that's
year,
so
being fluid.
good. Yes.
Yeah. 'Cause you just don't know, right? You don't know what you don't know, and things happen and you can't
Right.
control them. You couldn't control the outcome of that
No,
freaking test
no.
no matter what you did. You couldn't control whether somebody took your credit card or not. You couldn't control whether they
Mm-hmm.
liked the $20 bill
Right.
or not, right? And you just had to
Surrender. It
just
was
be
surrender.
fluid
Yeah, I
and
use the analogy
surrender.
of swimming
Yes.
lessons. I don't know if everybody learns this way, but I remember my swimming teacher telling me that if I got tired, I should turn over and float on my back, right? Yep. So I
Float on
had
your
this
back.
moment where I was like,
Mhm.
I am thrashing around in this water, resistant to everything that's happening, mad at the world, right? And I'm exhausting myself, and I'm going to drown. I'm going to drown out here. And there literally is no one to save me. There is no one
No.
who's going to throw me something to rest, a foam noodle. I don't have anything. So I was like, it's time to turn over and float on your back, Janine. Turn over and float. And that is complete surrender.
Oh.
That's belly up vulnerability, right? You just, okay, here it is. If it's a big wave, you're going over it. Like, you got nothing. And that, I just kind of kept coming back to that. And I think that that's where I still will thrash around. I'm still learning the lessons. I'm certainly not like adept at it yet, but I get there faster, and I flip over and okay, this is happening. Let's
Mhm.
write it. Where's it going? What's for me? What am I learning?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mindset. It's a mindset, and you have to get there. You have to like, okay, here comes that voice. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Put in the right mindset. Let me ask you this, Janine. What was it like writing the book? Was it
Yes.
easy?
Yes.
Was it hard? I know it's channeled. You channeled, and so when you had to send that to the manuscript guy, when you sent your
Mm-hmm.
manuscript to the guy, I should say, were you
Yeah.
terrified?
I mean,
Or were you
Yeah,
like,
it is.
yes, this is it?
It is
Which
so
were you?
scary. It is so scary to send your work off to someone else. And
Mm.
I sent it to 3 editors to have them preview and send me a sample of their work so that I could tell if they were the right match for me to work with in terms of did they understand my voice. And
Mhm.
I knew that much. That much was really strong for me. I kept hearing, protect your voice, protect your voice. So I didn't want someone to like fix it. I wanted it to be fully in my voice. But I had to send it to 3 different editors and like wait and see if they even wanted to work on the project and how they
Mm.
responded. And it was scary and it was really vulnerable when I started working with my editor. My publishing advisor had told me it's a lot like dating, that it's a very vulnerable thing. You have to be able to trust each other. You have to be able to say honest things to someone that you're really just getting to know. So it was an exercise in fearing trust and trusting fear while I learned to work with my editor.
Oh,
And
wow.
but he was exactly the right guy and fully understood and inspired me. I thought he was going to like make corrections and make suggestions, and he never did. He just always asked me the right question, and then I'd get off the phone with him and I'd write for hours and I'd be like, oh, that was exactly the right question.
Oh,
And it just
wow.
made it so much better. He's like, I don't understand. There's like sometimes you don't know that there's a backstory to something that you just take for granted, and a reader reading it is going to go, where'd this just come from? So he was good at like extracting that from me. So yeah, I can honestly say I have never loved anything as much as I have loved writing this book. Like it was a spectacular
Oh,
experience. It
wow.
was hard and exhausting. I burned like hundreds of candles. I had to keep stopping and getting in water to calm my central nervous system. I was reliving trauma constantly. I didn't sleep. My body wasn't well. I had a lot of gut issues when I came home. I had to like make massive
Mm.
changes in my diet. And so I had all this stuff going on, but the writing was like this, it was like it felt like welcome home is what it felt like. It just felt like this piece of me that had been missing, and it was like this opportunity, and I just felt this urgency to it, and it was like I just I had to write it. I don't know how to put words to it. This feels really vulnerable to share, but there was this point where the urgency felt so strong that I actually wrote what was in essence a will about my book, because I started to question if maybe I was going to die, because the power behind that was driving me to hurry up and get this on paper felt like maybe I was going to run out of time. It felt that strong. It wasn't like I felt sick like I was going to die, but it just was
Oh,
like,
my
am I running
gosh.
out of time? And so it
Yeah.
just was pushing it out of me. But I understand it now in hindsight that I needed to write it while it was still fresh, while I was still feeling it in my body. It was important that I write from that place. And the people who have read my book so far say, I'm in it with you. It's like I'm right there. And that's what I wanted. You know, it's like I opened the
Wow.
doors wide and said, join me in this experience, you know? So yeah, it was a extremely taxing, draining, but very fulfilling at the same time. It was this really interesting experience. And then I really missed it, really missed it when that whole editing process was done, and then it's just off with other people. Somebody's proofreading it and it's being in layout, and it's like, oh, this. And I joked with my editor and told him I was missing it, and he said, yes, it's very much like a child, Janine. Like, you have raised this child and now it's time to send it out into the world to be whatever it's going to be. And I was like, oh, that feels so right. Like, the book has
Mm.
wings and it's going to go out there and be whatever it is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
I've done my part. It's all I can do. And then I laughed. I go, but the empty nest is real. So I miss it. I really do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
which is a great segue. So my question now to you is, okay, I mean, first of all, congratulations,
Thank
amazing.
you.
So many lessons. I'm excited to read the book. Where do you move from here? What are you doing? How does this work? You have empty nest syndrome.
Well, I'm keeping busy. I mean, I'm still running my business and I'm still writing just for me. I just wrote a new poem. And so I just am enjoying this ride. So I hired a PR team and my media kit's going out in just a few days. And then the book launch, going live on the 9th of September. And then having a launch party on the 10th. And I am going to start working with a recording studio to do the audiobook version of it, which I hope to have out before the end of the year.
Oh, yes, do
Yeah.
Audible.
Yeah. It'll be on Audible and iTunes.
I love Audible. And your voice is beautiful.
Yes.
Are you going to be
I'm going to do
Are
the
you going to be
narration
reading it?
because I think it's important that
Excellent.
you hear my emotion in it. And so I will be doing it. So we'll hopefully, I don't know what my timing's gonna be like, and I'm traveling internationally again for the first time in November. Some people ask me if I'm afraid, to travel internationally. I'm like, I am a badass world traveler now. Like literally, I can handle anything. It all happened, right? I didn't lose my passport and I wasn't arrested. But outside of that, pretty much everything happened. There's stuff I just didn't share, but my room door wouldn't lock. I had a strange man come in. I had the government looking for me because they knew I tested positive. It was all this stuff, right? So, yeah. So I'm like, good.
But it's all in the book. You can't share it on the podcast. Right. It's in the book. This was a teaser.
Well, there's a lot. I can't give you 5 hours of Audible, they're telling me. So I think it's more than we can fit in a podcast.
I'm so excited to listen to that. Oh my gosh, I love Audible. I'm so excited. So excited for you. Where are you at mentally now? How are you feeling?
I'm good. I feel
physically, mentally, you there? Are you feeling yourself again?
I feel super happy and grounded, and there's a fly. I feel really good. I'm really proud of what I've done. I am really humbled by what I've done. I'm excited to see what it's going to go out there and do, and I don't need it to do anything, so it's just like this beautiful place where I can just let it be what it is meant to be and float on my back. So I'm in a really, really good space. I'm looking forward to, whatever's coming next. I would love to write again, but I don't feel like I can just decide to write. I think writing chooses me. And so I need to wait for that pull again. But I don't feel well if I'm not writing. So I do still express myself through journaling and through poetry. And I think that there will be something that will pull me to write again. I think I will always identify as a writer now. Yeah.
I think you should. That's fantastic. Janine, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I read when we first got on, I said, we don't really need to do a pre-interview because we already know your story. I know your story. But then I read you my first intro and it was like nowhere. You're like, well, I kind of need to share that the book isn't what you think it is. And I'm almost glad it isn't, because I feel like this stripping of the burqa and floating up, that is so powerful. And I think especially women, but I think people in general, humans on this earth at this time, we are just covered in layers of stuff, and everybody's stuff, there's similarities, but there's a lot of different stuff that we all carry for whatever reason. And we need to get to that where we just kind of let it go and we float up to the surface. And that's when we can be true. And that's when we can get the messages. And that's when we can look up
and
rather than out. And find
we're not alone in that. And I think we do. We feel alone, so we hide. And that's why I'm like, if more of us would just share the messiness and share the vulnerability and just, encourage each other to do this together. Yeah, absolutely. Important work.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much. I'm so excited. We're going to share again the success of this book after you've been on all the talk shows. And I'll say, I'm going to have you back on Second Wind to share all this amazing success. And I think that for you, it's not even going to be that for you. I know that you're going to find the success of it when you get that first letter from someone that says, wow, your book changed my life. I know that that's what's going to
100%.
resonate with you and make you
I mean,
feel like it was all
it's
worth
one
it.
thing for reviewers to like my book, but it's
Yeah,
another
because
for
you're
it
that
to like
kind of
change
person.
someone's life out there. Like that's the power. That's why I wrote this book. That's why I'm willing to be this vulnerable. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I love talking
Thank
to
you
you.
so much. And I'm still waiting for your book
For
of
what?
poems. I love talking to you, but I want you to put all your poems,
Oh, well,
all
they're
your
all
poems
posted
need
on
to
my
go in a
website
book.
right now. So all of my favorite poems that I've written are on my website. So it's just JanineValentine.com. You can go there and there's a whole poetry page. So they're there. I know you want it in a print version, but you can read it online. There's several in the book coming out. And yeah, there might be a poetry book someday. I don't know. I'm open to it. We'll see. Thank you,
Okay, good.
Wendy.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Janine. And until
Yeah.
next time, breathe in your second wind. Thank you for listening today. I hope that something you heard made you smile, made you think, and made you feel. If these incredible stories empowered you, awakened you, or left you feeling inspired, make sure to share with a friend and write us a review on iTunes so we can continue to change lives through this content. Make sure you tag us while you're listening on our Facebook group, My Second Wind, or hit the link in the show notes to join the conversation. Until next time, go ahead and breathe in your second wind.